Hello, I'm Reverend Rick, and it is my honor to be with you today. We really hope that this video is a blessing to you. And if it is, please consider making a donation. People watch our videos locally when they cannot necessarily come to church throughout the United States and the world. So please join us and click the link below and make a donation. Thank you, and let this be a blessing to you.
Prepare ourselves. If you cover your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
Now your ears, I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
Now over your heart, just extend out your arms. I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that nobody gets to define you but you. Nobody gets to define you but you. Your childhood church doesn't get to define you. This church doesn't get to define you. Your parents don't get to define you. Teachers don't get to define you. Your spouse doesn't get to define you. Your adult children your teenage, nobody gets to define you but you. Unless, of course, you give them permission to define you, and unfortunately you and I do that all the time. Some of us are working under the false impression that we are not creative, that we are not smart, that we are not pretty or handsome. Now, the problem with that is that there is nothing to stop you from buying into those definitions of yourself. And there's nothing to stop you right this minute from saying that ends. I know. I am smart. I am handsome or pretty. I am good with money. I am sensitive. I am not too sensitive, but just right sensitive. I am compassionate. Nothing to stop you from any of do that in this life. Because here's the thing, no matter how long you've been patterned to believe in the limited you, this moment, this day, this time, you can put an end to it. You can break the chains that you once had that make you believe that you are a limited person. You know, I often tell the story of the elephant, and so some of you know this story, and that's the story of the way they train elephants in the circus, or when they used to have elephants in the circus and train them. They would put a chain, a length of chain on the elephant's leg, and then a stake. And the elephant could only go as far as that chain would allow them from the stake. And then after a couple of weeks, the trainer would take the stake away, but not the chain. So the elephant still had the chain, but it was no longer attached. But they would only go as long as they used to go when it was tied to a stake, because they had been programmed to believe that. And unfortunately, there are a lot of us in this room, myself included, who are still in change. Some of us have been taught that what we've done in the past or where we've come from determines where we're going to go in the future, and we only go that far. We stop ourselves. We only go as far as we think we can go, based on our past experiences. Now, we all know exceptions to this. We've seen it. And the one thing that people who are the exception to this, who break out of those chains, have is a passion that pushes them past the invisible barriers that society has put on them, that's tethered them to. Bill Wilson pushed past his chains and created a movement of Alcoholics Anonymous that not only changed him, but changed the entire planet for many, many thousands and hundreds of thousands of us, because he pushed past what he had done in the past and what he thought his definition of himself. Malala Yousafzai, that young girl, pushed past the chains that held young girls in her country to a certain place. And she said, no, I have passion to be who I am. And who I am is full and wants to learn Our own Ebony Harper has pushed past those chains. And she has passion for life and passion for knowing an authentic life of who she is. Passion is critical, and there are a lot of us in this room who need to find the passion in our life to be able to break out of those chains. We're not chained in every area of our life, but I suspect, if we want to be honest, every single one of us has a slice of our life where we're chained up, where we believe we can't go any farther because of what we've done or where we've come from. We don't need any chain, any slice of our life limiting us in our life. We just need some help to clear out the way so that we can begin to see who we are, to feel our passion. Well, I'm winding up a little series that I think can help us with that. Today we're doing the last of the 10 Commandments, or what some of us in this movement call the 10 Wisdoms. Because commandment has that feeling that somebody's going to force us to do it. If we can harmonize ourselves with the 10 Commandments, if we can really understand the 10 Commandments and begin to work them in our life, we will know a freedom we've never known before. We will be able to break any chain that's in us. Now, the first 7 are on CD, they're on our YouTube channel, you can get them. We're working with the last 3 today. The first one that we're going to work with is thou shalt not steal. The second one we'll work with is thou shalt not bear false witness. And the third one is thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor oxen, nor garden tools. Okay? I'm going to get to this a little bit later, as you can imagine. But I love being, I don't know what's worse, being compared to oxen or garden tools. The shovel or the ox, but we'll do that later. Right now we're gonna just work with this one. The first one, thou shalt not steal. Now look, some of this is obvious. We don't need to spend a lot of time with it. Shoplifting is stealing. 22 million people were arrested for shoplifting in the last year. 22 million. Over $20 billion of goods were shoplifted within the last year. Shoplifting is stealing. Don't do it. Don't steal paper clips. Don't steal pencils. Don't steal staples from your office. Just don't do it. Don't. Thou shalt not steal. Don't steal. Not returning borrowed items is stealing. Now, look. The problem with stealing isn't that it makes a God in the sky mad. The problem with stealing is it robs you of your divinity. It separates you from the divinity. Your highest self is not a thief. And that's where we want to get to, is to understand that the danger of stealing is that when we begin to steal, something inside of us starts to feel not okay. Something inside of us begins to have secrets in our life. And whenever we have secrets in our life, we start this energy of don't notice me. The don't notice me energy is the greatest energy that allows us to stop growing in our life. And what we want to do is to grow. So you can't have a strong identity walking around with don't notice me. Bill Wilson said, hey, look at me. Malala said, hey, look at me. Thank God, Ebony is saying, hey, look at me. Because it is not only freeing them, but it's freeing all of the people that they come in contact with. We all need to be a church going out doing that. All of us need to go out and do that. People who grow don't steal things. But stealing things is only a part of this commandment. The other part of this commandment I want to touch on is also stealing other people's serenity. Now, the truth be told is, if you are a grounded person, if you will take some time every morning to get centered, it's very difficult to steal your serenity. It's not on somebody else to steal. They can't steal it because you're grounded. Beth Davis, who used to live in Hawaii, once told me a story about flying from San Francisco to Hilo in Hawaii. And in San Francisco, there were a group of Hawaiians waiting to go home, as well as some non-Hawaiians waiting to go on their vacation. and she said they were there and the airline delayed them, and the longer the delay, the Hawaiians were just kind of centered, and they began to sing songs, they talked with one another, they were just centered. The non-Hawaiians, not so much. So they get on the plane, and the plane is still not fixed, and so they make them get off the plane, and now people, and it would have robbed me of my serenity. I would have been one of the non-Hawaiians that were like cranky, you know? But not the Hawaiians. They helped other people with their children. They told the children stories. They taught them how to sing songs. They were centered. They were centered because they had the aloha spirit, what Beth calls the aloha spirit. And the aloha spirit is simply a more centered, calm spirit. You don't have to race to get anywhere because you're where you need to be, wherever you are. So it's not possible. But for those of us who are not Hawaiians and who might have serenity stolen, we want to remember the words of Ernest Holmes, who said that God is manifest through all of creation, but is not bound by that creation. God is manifest through all of creation, but is not bound. It's a science of mind way of saying, leave the drama at home. God's not in your drama. God doesn't care about your drama. God is not in your drama. God is in your love and your good in your life. So we want to just ask ourselves, stop stealing other people's serenity. It's breaking the commandment. Every time you think about lighting a fire, and we all do that, you know, we light the fire of getting everybody all worked up about something that we're passionate about. Think of this commandment, thou shalt not steal. Try not to steal other people's serenity in your life. The next one I want to go to is, thou shalt not bear false witness. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Anytime, this is an easy one, I could just do it in 2 seconds, I'm not good, of course, but anytime you hold anybody less than whole, perfect, and complete, you've just broken this commandment. You've been able to bear false witness in somebody's life. Some of you have heard me tell this story of Mildred before. Mildred was the church gossip and self-appointed monitor of the church's morals. She kept sticking her nose into other people's business. Several members did not approve of her extracurricular activities, but they feared her enough to maintain their silence. Hasn't that happened where you know you should stand up for somebody, but you didn't want them to turn on you, so you just didn't say anything, hoping that they didn't notice that you were in the room? Well, Mildred made a mistake, however. She accused Frank, a new member, of being an alcoholic after she saw his old pickup parked in front of the town's only bar one afternoon. She emphatically told Frank and several others that everyone seeing it there would know what he was doing. Frank, a man of few words, stared at her for a moment and just turned and walked away. He didn't explain, defend, or deny. He said nothing. Later that evening, Frank quietly parked his pickup in front of Mildred's house, walked home, and left it there all night long. For this commandment, you and I are called upon to see past the outer into the inner, and that is not easy. It is not easy to see past the outer into the inner in our life. And I struggle with this probably more than anything else. And when we say that everyone is whole, perfect, and complete, we mean Donald Trump is whole, perfect, and complete. We mean Bill Cosby is whole, perfect, and complete. We mean Roseanne Barr is whole, perfect, and complete. Now, don't get me wrong. I do not tolerate their behavior for 1 minute. I will speak out about their behavior every opportunity I get. I think the consequences that Bill Cosby and Roseanne Barr are facing are good consequences in my mind, but that's not mine to judge. Mine to judge is not to judge the outer, but the inner. Now again, I don't mean that we should be doormats. I do not mean that we should stick our head in the sand. I want all of us who are able to resist what's going on in this country that is not in alignment with my values or your values. I want you to speak out loud, speak out often. that is not an excuse to not find them whole, perfect, and complete. Because once we lock somebody in, we've not given them the opportunity to change. We've given them a snapshot. We're not snapshots. We're moving pictures. We're not snapshots. And we need to allow, you can't allow for people to change if you've written them off. And I'm telling you, I do it all the time. It's hard to do, but I'm trying to catch myself and say, I'm looking past the outer into the inner. Because if people looked at me when I was in my 20s and locked me into that, I'm telling you, you'd run the other way. I want to give people a chance to change in their life. The 10th one of my favorites. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor, his wife, his manservant, his maid, his ox, his ass, or anything belonging to the neighbor. Okay. Now, there's some more meat to this I'm going to get to in a minute, but for a moment, I just want to talk to my sisters in the church this morning and say, I think our rights are at peril in this country at this moment. But we have come a long way from being considered to be as good as the shovel or the axe. And we need to be grateful for that, and we need to celebrate how far we've come, maybe, because we've come a long way. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be vigilant, and in this country, this time, we should be hyper-vigilant. And I'm not just talking to my sisters here, but to all of us. We need to be hyper-vigilant to protect the rights of women so that we don't have another Handmaid's Tale that is not just fiction in this country. And I want to just talk about history here for a minute, and that is in Germany, they just couldn't believe what was going on. And as a result, they stuck their head in the sand. When you stick your head in the sand, you get a Germany. So we want to be aware, not frightened. No weapon formed against us can prosper if we are awake. But that's not really what this commandment is just about. In our life. This commandment, we've already talked about stealing, don't stealing. So here's the thing about coveting. I actually don't like this commandment. I think coveting is good. I think coveting is necessary. Coveting, the word coveting simply means to desire. And so when we talk about thou shalt not covet, I worry that we're not looking at other people and desiring what they have. Because in religious science, we call it this. We call it the law of mental equivalence. Until you can see something, you can't have it. If you can't see it, if you don't know it exists, you can't have it. So if you see a great marriage, I want you to spy on that marriage. I want you to covet that marriage. I don't want you to covet the people. We talked about that last week with adultery. No, I want you to spy and covet. How do they deal with each other? How do they speak to each other? How do they treat one another? How do they deal with the small irritations in their marriage? I want you to spy on it, I want you to desire it, and I want you to have it in your life. If you see something in the material realm that you want, I want you to look at it, I want you to desire it, I want you to covet it in your life. You don't steal theirs, but you say, how did you get what you have that I also want in your life? That's the law of mental equivalence, and it's powerful. I don't like this commandment. See, the truth is, I came from very working class parents, and some of you have heard this story before. There was nobody who lived on any golf course in my family, in my nuclear family or my extended family. There was none of that business. I never even knew it existed. And then in Santa Rosa, when I was a grown person, I went to a party once, and it was on a golf course. And oh my God, people live on golf courses. And from that moment, I coveted. I desired. And it took me 18 years. And the home Donna and I own is about as big as my office, but it's on a golf course. Because I desire it, I covet it. See, I think one of the biggest tragedies about school budgets in this country, the cuts in school budgets, is that we don't take kids on field trips anymore the way we used to go on field trips. Because if you come from a certain neighborhood or a certain family, you don't even know what's out there because it's not in their consciousness. And if it's not in their consciousness, it's harder to get into your consciousness. And if it's not in your consciousness, you can't have it. The law of mental equivalence says you must be able to see it in order to be able to manifest it. So I ask you to do this. I ask you to take the first 9 commandments into your heart, and I believe that if you take them into your heart, your life will be better. And I ask you to take the 10th commandment into your head and to know. We don't want you knocking anybody over the head to steal the deed to their house, but we want you to want what they have and figure out a way they got it and how you might get it. Let's take this message into prayer. There's only one power. It's the power of love, and it runs abundantly, unlimitedly through me. And when I get out of the way, when I get my limitations out of the way, when I cut the chain out of the way, it flows through me. I give thanks for that. I release this word in the law together with saying, and so it is.